The speaker for today is one of the an alumni of the Archaeological Studies program. She did her research in pa- uh, on
Palynology.
palynology. My gosh. I'm so sorry. On palynology on her master's, but she also went to work in the National Museum of the Philippines, and her interest started to shift. So she started doing her work in underwater archaeology. She was working in the underwater
Maritime.
the maritime and underwater maritime archeo division of the National Museum. Am I correct?
Maritime
Sorry.
and Underwater
Okay.
Cultural Heritage Division.
Yes, the Match D division. Yes. So she is currently pursuing her PhD in archaeology at the Institute for Scientific Archaeology at Tübingen University, Germany. She was a former senior museum researcher at the Maritime and Underwater Cultural Heritage Division. So now her focus is on the early maritime trade and history of the Philippines. And to get to that, she had to do a lot of training and analysis. And one of the trainings that she did is this experience that she is going to share with us now. So welcome to Miss Catherine King.
Good morning,
It's fine.
good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, morning here where I'm at in France. So, yeah, just a background on about this poster. This is a picture of us, my diving buddy and I, Panas, during our first underwater activity in the program. So we were trying out two basic methods of survey, the offset method and the trilateration methods. In this picture, we were doing the horizontal offset method, wherein one person holds the end of the tape measure to a feature in the artifact. In this case, it's Panas, while I hold the other end of the tape, swinging and measuring the distance against the fixed baseline, which is the line perpendicular to it. So yeah. That's it. The title of my presentation is ICUA Experience, Croatian Underwater Archaeology, Practices and Learnings. This presentation, as the title indicates, is a sharing of my experience partaking in the basic underwater archaeology course last September, conducted by ICUA or the International Center for Underwater Archaeology in Zadar, Croatia. My talk will not particularly discuss Croatian archaeology. Nonetheless, I will share a bit of information on that. But I wanted to focus on Croatia's organizational framework, field practices, advocacies with respect to the field of underwater archaeology, and my takeaways during this 2 week of training course. Oopsie. So I'd like to, do you see the cursor? Yeah.
Yes,
So
we
I'd
can
like,
see it.
okay, thank you. I'd like to direct your attention to the logos on the slide found on the bottom left. So these are the institutions and organizations instrumental to my participation in this training. So UP and ASP, of course, for my archaeology background, National Museum for the essential knowledge and experiences, CMAS as my basic underwater diving license provider, and last but not the least, the Greta Henkel Foundation, which is my scholarship and financial aid in my stay here in Europe. Okay, so just a brief background on the country where we had a training at. So Croatia is located in the Balkan Peninsula, with the country's mainland bordered by Slovenia, Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the Slavic world, Croatia is also called Hrvatska. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So yung for example, we have a government website, diba? PH yung huli, sa kanila HR. So they're using Hrvatska instead of Croatia. So to the west is 1,000 plus kilometer of coastline, and an additional 6,000 more to include the coastlines of 1,200 islands located within the Adriatic Sea. So the archaeology in Croatia spans from Paleolithic to historical. More explored and archaeological richness comes from Neolithic to Roman period. Here are the representative artifacts per period. bone tools and pottery from the Neolithic, Italian pottery, Greek materials during the Greek colonization, different amphorae from the Greco-Italian and Roman occupation. So the beginnings of Croatian archaeology, underwater archaeology to be specific, has much to do with this person on the left, Don Fran Bulic. I don't know. Don Bulic is considered the father of underwater archaeology in Croatia, very fittingly, kasi he was both a priest and an archaeologist. So he started noticing antiquities in many locations, but most especially in Solin, where he discovered a basilica with burials from the Roman period. He also founded an organization which aimed at preservation of Croatian archaeology. And now, one of the earliest discoveries in Croatia are the wooden ship remains found in Nin, raised in the 1960s and 70s. These ships are of traditional shipbuilding technology in Croatia. The preservation technology then was not too advanced, therefore some parts of the ship deteriorated. But currently ICUA is doing a restoration project on these, and one of the two ships are currently displayed in one museum in Croatia. Another project and excavation in the 1960s is the Gagliano Grossa shipwreck to the right. It was discovered in the early 60s, but not rescued until the 1967. Some of the materials found its way in the private collections in Belgium, unfortunately. The 16th century ship was lost on its way from Venice to Constantinople. A great assemblage of artifacts was found within the site. So our lecturer shared us the story of the raising of the artifacts. So sabi niya, maraming media outfits around the area when they were trying to raise the materials from the shipwreck. And one material that caught the attention of the public and the media as well was the metal chest shown on the top of the slide. So everybody was watching as the researchers were trying to open the chest, and like it was a horror flick movie. Anyway, they were as they opened the chest, inside were tremendously preserved clothing materials, not even gold, not even gemstones or whatever, but completely preserved clothing. So it's very rare in the underwater archaeology world to have organic remains preserved. Anyway, they said that these clothings may belong to the sailors of the ship. Another important material that was raised was the metal anchor from the ship, which was immediately exhibited in front of a museum. No conservation was done on the anchor, therefore deteriorated over time. Because the anchor was exhibited outdoors, it suffered debilitating factors from nature and people who would sit on and climb on the anchor. ICUA experts are currently working on the preservation of this important artifact. Another important discovery in the Croatian waters is the 2-meter statue, bronze statue called Apoxiomen to the left of the slide. Apoxiomen was an amazingly preserved ancient Greek bronze statue dating to the 2nd to 1st century BCE. So more than 2,000 years now. Apoxiomen represents an athlete in the act of scraping dust and sweat from his body using a strigil. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right also. But yeah, it's very common in the Greek world before na magkaroon ng Greek statues na parang yung naghihilod using labaha, parang ganun. Ganun ko siya na i-compare. Anyway, this Apoxiomen became so famous that one museum was made particularly for it, which cost 20 million euros. So yun, yung picture sa ibaba, yun yung museum just for it. Yeah. So based on the possibilities and looting issues that then present, the obligation to research and protect these sites was undertaken by teams operating out of areas in Croatia in the frame of their institutions. Systematic researches were done and conducted on these sites. At present, there are more than 600 underwater sites discovered and registered off the waters of Croatia. All cultural heritage, whether in water or land, found in Croatia is owned and protected by the government under its law. Of the 600, more than 100 sites are permanently protected, wherein diving and other activities are specially regulated. Other sites are taken over by concessionaires. So this is kind of important. I will tell more about this later. Concessionaires, which are the diving clubs around Croatia. These clubs are legally allowed to operate in these areas for tourism purposes. The concessionaires are in exchange mandated to uphold the preservation and conservation of the sites. Okay. So with hundreds of sites to look after, it raises the questions of which institutions manage them. There are actually 4 institutions under the direction and management of Croatia's Ministry of Culture. They are the Underwater Archaeology Department of the Croatian Conservation Institute, the ICUA, University of Zadar, and archaeological museums. So they conduct their own researches independent or in collaboration with one another. So hindi katulad sa atin na pag gusto mo mag-excavate sa isang lugar, hingi ka ng permit from the National Museum. So sila, they conduct their own researches independent of each other. So one of ICUA's pride is that in 2004, Croatia ratified the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage, or the 2001 Convention, becoming only the 3rd country to do so after Panama and Bulgaria. Because there are thousands of shipwrecks and ruins in underwater today, which is great for maritime archaeologists, it is also unfortunately attractive to underwater treasure hunters, which aim to make profit from selling underwater heritage. Underwater heritage, for the most part, remains unprotected. Therefore, it was not only a necessity, but a matter of urgency to create and adopt an international instrument for the protection of these heritage that is also assigned to afford the same protection as those on land. They must be handled with respect and spared from pillaging. The UNESCO member states in 2001 elaborated and adopted the UNESCO 2001 Convention, which represents the response of the intermerged archaeological sites. This convention recognizes the urgent need to preserve and protect such heritage, promote underwater archaeology, and public awareness. From the time humans moved across islands and traveled the distant seas, vessels that carried them have been part of our common history and heritage, in the same way as heritage on land. As of present, there are only 65 member states that have ratified the 2001 Convention. Senegal, a country in Africa, last September became the most recent country to adopt the convention. Philippines is unfortunately still not a signatory of this convention. Cambodia is the 16th country to ratify the convention and is the only Southeast Asian country to do so. Okay. So I have been mentioning ICUA for quite a few slides now. So what exactly is ICUA? So ICUA, or the International Center for Underwater Archaeology in Zadar, sprang from the Croatian Conservation Institute in 2007. So yung CCI, yun yung only archaeologically oriented department that is government of Croatia. So it became an independent public institution with the international agreement between UNESCO and Croatia in 2009. Its funding principally comes from both the national government and UNESCO. Other programs and projects are funded by international sources. So the decision to found ICUA was grounded largely on the fact that Croatia was among the first countries to ratify the 2001 Convention. ICUA is a UNESCO Category 2 center, which means that ICUA operates under the auspices of UNESCO and is a certified center to provide independent training courses on underwater archaeology and implement and promote the 2001 convention. So currently, there are only 12 staff with 4 underwater archaeologists, 4 conservators, and 4 personnel from the administration and accounting department. So besides being underwater archaeologists in the field and research, these 4 personnel also wear the hat of the director and department heads for Department for Education and Documentation and Department of Underwater Heritage Presentation. The Department of Underwater Heritage Protection tasks include installation, inventory, presentation, and popularization of exhibits and galleries, while the Department of Education and Documentation is in charge of organizing courses and trainings, and creation and management of a central digital database. The conservators, on the other hand, are experts in the field and carry out researches and conservation works on the underwater finds, while the International Cooperation and Funding Department is the one responsible for international promotions and drafting of proposals and applications for funding. So since 2011, that is for 10 years, they have had 205 participants from so far 13 different programs. So on the slide are the different programs being offered by ICUA. Some participants would join advanced classes after taking part in the basic courses. So far, ICUA has hosted participants from 39 countries, largely from Europe, 27 countries from Europe, also from Australia, North Africa, including USA and North America, including USA and Mexico, from Asia, including China, Taiwan, Oman, Pakistan, and Thailand, and from Africa, participants from Senegal, Egypt, and Namibia. So I'm very grateful to be actually the first Filipino to have been part of any ICUA program. So how did I know about the course? How was I able to apply for the course? So I'm gonna discuss more about that. So I have been following the ICUA and its pages since I found out about it since last year. So I wanted to actually participate in their conservation course when I did some studies of the organic remains in the National Museum when I was still there. So when I got here in Europe for my PhD last year, I had the opportunity to attend a conference they organized. And so I was able to be in contact with them. But besides that, they posted the application in all of their social media platforms. So the call for the course was, I think, posted in June or July. And then, so I thought of applying and taking a chance. So these are the requirements. So in the slide, so ano lang, basic requirements lang. University education must be related to archaeology or any related field. Open water license, medical certificate kasi ongoing rin yung COVID, and of course because you're gonna dive, kailangan na approved ng doctor na you're healthy, and must be 18 years of age or above. So according to the post, the course would be for 2 weeks, and there were only 4 participants to be accepted. So medyo steep yung competition. But the best part of it was the course was for free. So I had to only go there, so with my own financial capacity. Pero all of it are free, including the dormitory, and they actually gave us some 80 euro worth of card, which can be used to grocery stores. Pero whenever we dine out or drink outside, sariling gastos na namin yun. So the deadline of the application was set to August 10, and the announcement was given the week after. I actually, in the beginning, got the regret response, email of regret. Kasi according to their government, a virus test is mandatory for all people coming from developing countries. which must be done a maximum of 48 hours before arriving at the Croatian border, which would have been impossible if flying from outside EU. So this policy restricted their participant pool to only coming from Europe or nearby countries. So of course, when I received this email, I felt sad, but mostly disappointed. So I felt that this was an unfair choice and discriminatory towards some applicants. But ICUA was not to blame, as it was the Croatian government which implemented this policy. And actually, ICUA also ran the risk of canceling the course if not enough candidates were able to come. Because Zadar, Croatia, that time was already considered a risk zone in most European countries. Nevertheless, I thought that this rule did not apply to me as I had been living in Europe since last year. I explained my case, and by luck, they emailed me back 2 weeks after, as one slot had become available. So this is how our schedule went. So for 2 weeks. Now, before I continue, I'd like to put forth a disclaimer. EU's borders were already open and we were cleared to travel to Croatia. But keep in mind, of course, precautions such as social distancing and wearing of face masks. My planes to and from Germany to Croatia were barely full. So every day we start from 8:30 at the lecture room. There were 1 or 2 lectures every day, which usually lasts until 10:30 to 11. Sometimes we would have dry exercises, which is a simulation of activities that we would do in the site. Then we prepare and load our gears and materials needed for that day to the site, which is just 15 minutes away from the ICUA premises. Depending on the activity, we would do it all together as a team. So we were 5 students, 1 Croatian, 1 Greek, 1 Spanish, 1 Romanian, and me. That means we have 2 or 3 teams usually, and then we finish around 3 or 4, and that's the only time we would have our lunch. So minsan nagpapack lang kami ng sandwiches, pero since magda-dive, we don't want to be full kasi baka masama sa pakiramdam. So these are some photos of our lectures in the morning. Here's Mladen on the top left. He's the director of ICUA, teaching us how to retrieve and record samples from the grid. Maya is the main organizer of the course on the top right, giving us a lecture on some ICUA researches. And bottom left is Luca, former director of ICUA, giving a lecture on 2001 UNESCO Annex. And bottom right is Rocco sharing a PowerPoint on underwater photogrammetry. And here is our situation in the morning. So we participate and listen intently to our lecturers. Some of our dry exercises were done inside ICUA premises, just in front of our room in our parking space. In their parking space, sorry. So after the lecture and dry exercises, we then load our boxes. So it's personalized. We each have our own boxes. So we load our personal gears and our tanks, load them in the van, put them on the back of the van, drive to the site, and then unload and suit up. We go to the site near the areas of the project members where the project members are working on to undertake our exercises. During the last 3 days at the site, we went to the actual grids and conducted archaeological excavations. The site is just few meters from the shore, so we just swim towards it while the other teams do their exercises. While the other teams are doing their exercises, the other participants are free to watch, swim around, or float to the surface, and sometimes go back because it gets cold sometimes when staying in the water. So after our exercises, we swim back, load our gears back to the van, Some debriefing and additional pointers happen on the way back to ICUA office. We immediately wash our gears and hang them to dry for the next day. Most often, we would have post-excavation exercises such as photo documentation of finds, recording, post-processing of photogrammetry pictures, drawing of measurements, encoding in site recorder, and putting the collected finds in the proper desalination containers. Some days, we would have a tour of ICUA premises, galleries, and museums in Zadar. So here are some of the pictures of the ICUA desalination area. So after recovering artifacts, we would put them under in this tubs or vats. And then here is a visit of the office of the Ceramics Conservation Laboratory. And here is a picture of Zadar Archaeological Museum. We are also treated with archaeological site visits in some places in Croatia, such as in Nin and Zadar. So here we visited some Roman sites like the amphitheater, settlement sites, and military camps. So what were we excavating? So let me first show the larger area of the Dalmatian coast and the significant sites along it. So the Dalmatian coast was important in the maritime network because this area provided safe harbor and had a relatively good wind for sailing. So sailing to the other side of Adriatic Sea towards the Italy area would immediately guarantee a catastrophe. An important area here is the Pashman Channel. So this whole area is the Pashman Channel, wherein many ports align the coast, and these ports are connected to a network of inland settlements. So from southeast to northwest are ancient ports of Pacostane, Biograd, Sucosan, Cotsino, and Zaton. Cotsino is now the city of Zadar, where ICUA is, and Zaton is near Nin, where the ancient traditional Croatian boats were found in the 60s. Lots of materials from the same period have been found in these ports. So this area, Pacostane, is actually regarded as one of the most important because they said the entrance to the channel, the one that controls the entrance of the channel controls the actual whole channel. So our site is located in the middle of the channel called Sucosan, the third one from the previous slide. There are still visible remnants of this Roman rusticae, which are Roman villages along the coast. So these are still there and are remnants of the Roman villages before. The first survey was conducted in 1970s as presented on the map above. Reconnaissance study was done just recently, I think since 2017. The team comes back once a year with 2 weeks of fieldwork in minimum. So the Sucosan site is a Roman harbor with 2 piers. So 1, 2. The piers measure differently and are 1 to 3 meters deep. From Google Images and aerial pictures of Barbier, the actual piers. The team uses different tools for visualization, including bathymetry of the seabed, photogrammetry, digital elevation model, and ICUA is part of the project Virtual Arch, this one, which aims to discover and present hidden archaeological heritage by using different tools for visualization. So the site is used as a test field for different underwater courses, such as our course. Many finds include pottery from pottery and coins from East Mediterranean, Italian, and North African provinces. So these are some of the examples of the artifacts found in the site. So the site is dated to the 1st to 5th century CE, based on the radiocarbon dating of wooden materials from the site. So this and this. The ceramics and coin found also corroborate the dating of the wood. There were many organic food wastes, including grains and animal bones, which are believed to be thrown by the villagers using the harbor. So the piers are believed to have been constructed in 2 phases. The first phase being dated to the 1st to 2nd century, while the second and last phase during the 2nd to 5th century. And the port might have been used until the 6th, only until the 6th century. It's also from the latter period, which is the 4th to 5th century, from which many artifacts are dated to. And the land structures, the one I showed earlier, the remnants of the Roman villages, are believed to be dated from that period as well. So from previous researches, they think they found out how they built the piers. So may mga kanina, I showed you some pictures of the wood, the logs. So they would line it vertically, like they would put it vertically, and then they would fill it with large stones, like this one. So that's how they constructed the pier. So the last day was supposed to be still an excavation day, but instead we were treated to a free day of scuba tour because we were good students. Anyway, we rowed a boat and dove around the island and went back and then went back. So after cleaning our gears for the last time and returning everything back, we had our afternoon barbecue and drinks. And that was the end of the 2-week course. So we said our goodbyes to the people from ICUA. And then that was Friday. So most of us had flights Sunday morning and afternoon. So we had Saturday free. So we were able to go to this national park in Croatia, which is one of the more famous ones. It's called the Plitch Beach National Park. So it's really nice and beautiful. So during my 2 weeks there, I really learned a lot from the skills underwater to their organizational framework. So we were awarded certificates after the training course. I was actually messaging a lot of people back in the Philippines, my class friends. So I was thinking maybe we could recreate something like this with class. Hopefully. So what were my key takeaways from this great experience? So I'd like to state that this short presentation and realization only wishes to spark or reignite conversations on the following. These are just some of the challenges in the underwater cultural heritage management of the Philippines. And actually, we have a paper with Kate and Bobby. The paper is now under review. And this paper discusses these issues and more in detail. So first, it made me think about our status and position in the 2001 convention. I remember in one of the lectures, we were asked by our teacher if our respective countries have already ratified this convention. So unfortunately, Philippines is still not a signatory of this convention. And I think our participation ended with the Hong Kong meeting held in 2003. So that's a long time ago. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if there are more efforts after that. The ratification goes all the way up. So hindi lang siya na stock sa National Museum. So it actually goes all the way up to the president level kasi it's a collaboration of many stakeholders. Another thing that surprised me is Croatia's permission and regulation of concessionaires. So I mentioned earlier na nag-a-allow sila ng concessionaires, wherein these concessionaires are actually the ones in charge of protecting the area in exchange for their profit from tourism. So could we adapt this practice of concessions? If so, who will manage them? Should this be under the jurisdiction of the National Museum, Department of Tourism, DNR? I don't know. Also, mabibilang sa kamay ang kilala kong nagpa-practice or are actually trained maritime archaeologists in the Philippines. So there are not enough maritime archaeologists in the country, and there are not enough trainings or any type of platform to develop capacity. Maritime archaeology is a highly specialized field, and trainings like this are very important and should be accessible. So in relation to accessibility, ICUA is very much welcoming to future applications from the Philippines in any of the training courses, and there's a possibility of future institutional collaboration, hopefully. With that, I'm leaving you all with ICUA's social media links and platform. If you want to know more about them and their projects, you feel free to go to their sites. They're very, very much keen in working with us and in the Philippines. I'd always show them pictures of nice places in the Philippines, and they love to go to Philippines. And they are very, very nice people. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening.
All right. Thank you, Kath. I think there's a lot of questions as well and a lot of interests regarding the underwater, both the underwater archaeology of Croatia, the underwater training, and also the possible collaborations and the questions that you raised about the concerns on the ratification of the protection of underwater cultural sites. So for everyone who has any questions, you can feel free to ask, but I will start because I think we already started talking about this question a few yesterday when we had yeah. So is there any, for everyone else, I guess I should start with, was there any attempt for the Philippines to have the similar training here in the Philippines, and who sponsored it, if there was?
Sorry, napuputol ka.
Oh, sorry. Was there any attempt of, or was there any other, did the Philippines have any similar trainings as well that focused on underwater archaeology training?
None that I know of sa Philippines na tayo yung nag-conduct ng training, pero I know some of the employees in the National Museum underwent training in Thailand.
Okay.
So I think it's been discussed a long time with Kate na gusto nga nilang or namin magsagawa ng ganitong training. Actually, na-discuss niya to sa paper namin na pwedeng i-train yung actually divers already. So diving communities are very, very interested in knowing more about archaeology. And napag-usapan nga namin nung naandun kami sa Croatia, sabi nila na mas madaling turuan ang mga divers ng archaeology rather than archaeology turo ang mag-dive. Yun yung thinking nila, pero I don't know. We don't have an idea yet kung ano ang mas maganda dito sa Pilipinas.
All right. How about the underwater? Gabby Gascon was saying that's a line from George Bass. Okay. How about the underwater archaeology in the Philippines? Because you mentioned that you have a paper, so maybe you can comment on it. Are there a lot?
Of what?
Because there are new students here. A lot of underwater archaeological studies here.
Alam ko, Ate Gay is teaching underwater archaeology course in archaeological studies program.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was still a student there, it was Doc Dizon who was teaching the course. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's only one course,
Mm-hmm.
2, 3, 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So hindi
Mm-hmm.
siya ganun ka hindi siya ganun ka karami. In fact, isa lang siya. And
Mm-hmm.
nung napunta ako sa much sa self-learning talaga, and also, syempre, guidance ng mga tao sa National Museum, yung pag-aaral ko
Yes.
ng maritime archaeology.
Ah. There's a question here from NB Sundiang. I am curious, what was the process of your application for the PhD program you're currently taking?
I think it's beyond this presentation. Anyway, so nasa National Museum ako, 'di ba? So doon ako na-introduce sa maritime archaeology. And then I was doing this study, and I said na baka pwedeng ituloy ito sa PhD program. So gumawa ako ng application, tapos pinasa ko sa other people dito muna sa Pilipinas to check if may potential yung project. And sabi nila may potential, and then naghanap ako ng scholarship, and fortunately merong ongoing collaboration with a German private scholarship. So nag-apply, sinubmit doon yung application ko, and fortunately natanggap yung scholarship ko. And then before that naghanap ako ng professor to any German university na tatanggap ng project ko. So, napunta ako sa Goethe University sa Frankfurt. Tinanggap nila ako doon, pero nagkaroon ng issue. So, naghanap ako ng other university sa Tübingen University, which is near the south of Germany. So, yun. Fortunately, natanggap ako ng university and also ng scholarship.
All right. So, if any, there might be other questions about it because there might be, yeah, it's an interesting process.
He or he can message me directly. I can tell him or her more about it.
Yes. Ara Espigar has a question. So, Kath, do they have priorities for applicants, i.e. students who are underwater archaeology students, or are topics or museum workers doing maritime?
Because of some restrictions, they had to prioritize European students kasi nga they were not accepting non-EU because of the COVID protocol. Pero normally, actually may priority sila with non-European kasi puro Europeans na yung naging previous participants nila. So meron silang preference, I think now, for diversity purposes.
All right. But
so,
you don't have to
malaking possibility na matanggap ang outside European countries.
But you don't have to be an archaeologist.
Yeah. So,
you don't have to be specialized in.
Naman sa requirement meron naman silang in-specify sa requirement. For this one, you have to be I think my university background on archaeology or any related field. So kami, yung 5 participants last time, ako, maritime archaeology. The Spanish girl was an incoming student in maritime archaeology in England. The Greek one is actually a social anthropologist. So hindi siya archaeologist. And lahat ng natakal about archaeology, sobrang bago sa kanya. And the Croatian guy is archaeologist, and Romanian is also an archaeologist.
I see. This Juan Rofes has a very good question and something that you can probably pass on. So, did you learn about protocols on how to properly recover underwater organic remains like animal bones or botanical materials? That's a cool question.
Dun kasi no. Pero dun sa area from
can you
this
answer
side,
in English?
Sorry. I have to speak in English because it's one. So from this side, we did not learn any protocol for retrieval of organic remains. But from this side, there are actually like many organic remains strewed across the site. We
Mhm.
we found like many animal bones, olive pulp, seeds, grains, ganyan. So because there were so many, we would just collect soil sample with
Oh, I
those
see.
artifacts in it. So we never really processed them, pero I think they just what do you say, quantify and qualify what the
Mhm.
materials or what the species of these artifacts are.
And because of that, because of the program, they're continuously getting people who are collecting and analyzing for them, so that it means that their materials, the material analysis never stops. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
oh, okay. And is that also the role of the institution to
Yeah,
continue to
there
analyze?
because it's actually a very known institution
Mm-hmm.
in underwater archaeology in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe most especially in Europe. So they have many collaborations. So since wala silang expert on organic remains, they would send it to some university or institution na mag-analyze ng gantong materials.
I see. All right. So they have partnerships with other
Yeah, a
institutions as
lot of
well throughout
partnership.
Europe.
Mhm. So
Ah,
yung
okay.
picture kanina na
Uh,
shinow ko yung visualization method. So meron yatang
uh-huh.
7 or 8 organizations na part ng program na yun.
Ah,
So from 7 different
I see.
countries.
Um,
Ah, okay.
may I do a
Oh, that's
follow-up
Yeah,
on this?
sure.
yes, yes, of
So,
course.
so thank you, Kat, for that very nice presentation. So, I was curious about this because usually when we have organic remains like bones, for example, that they are underwater and they are in this anaerobic environment. So if you extract from underwater, they quickly deteriorate. That's
Yeah.
what I was asking, because you
Mhm.
mentioned that they had a lot of bone remains there. So I'm curious if they did a special after removing them from underwater, if they undergo any special treatment to preserve them quickly.
Yeah. So what they do is they take a soil sample and put it in a plastic Ziploc bag. So with the soil and still some underwater, salt water, and then they bring it to when they go back to the ICUA premises, they put it on the desalination until someone could attend to them. So there's actually an expert in conservation of organic remains. So it's Anita, I think, yeah. So she's the one conserving these organic remains if they need it. But then if it doesn't need conservation, they send it to another institution for analysis. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, about extracting it inside a bag
Yeah.
with salt
Yeah,
water. That's very convenient. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
That's something that the the transfer or the logistics of transferring the materials is also something that a lot of people also forget, because once you pull out an artifact in a different environment, in any environment, you also have to start thinking about immediately about the conservation. So
Mm.
for for underwater, that doubles the task that you have to start thinking about, because sometimes the preservation process gets or the conservation process gets goes uh, badly. Okay, I think
Also,
there's
I'd like to mention also na they have a very strong conservation program in ICUA. So meron silang they have 4 experts in different fields. So 2 are doing conservation, restoration, and ceramics and glasses.
Mhm.
1 in organic remains such as wood, fibers, and 1 is doing metal conservation. They are
Oh,
also conducting training programs for restoration.
so that's a different program under
Mm-mm.
the ICO as well. That
Ano,
like the one that showed earlier.
I'm gonna show you the list of programs that you can. No. sheet. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So after that,
Yan. It me.
okay. Oh yeah, that's you. I didn't realize.
That's me, and of
Okay, so
course,
there
the
might be other people who are interested. So take a note of the programs that they're offering. So you might find something that might interest you. From Jay Saldivar, he has a question. So, what can you say about the personnel from the Coast Guard, Navy, and Maritime Police and other military divers as participants in underwater archaeology?
yes. Sobrang. These are the tag dito, market that are um na gusto naming or gusto na pwedeng i-train kasi sila talaga yung mostly exposed sa mga underwater sites kasi sila yung first tag dito, line of defense pag may mga looting involved, sila yung unang dumarating sa site. So mas talaga sila yung market na pwedeng i-train. And yeah.
So they have a lot of trainees who are from this sector.
What do you
as
mean?
well.
Sila ba? Or sa
Yeah.
atin? Sa Pilipinas yan? What do you mean?
No, I mean in ICUA. Sorry.
No.
Sila.
No.
Okay.
Kasi they already have thousands of archaeologists and hundreds maybe doing underwater archaeology.
Okay.
And I'm not really
So I guess
familiar with their military department.
all right. Nat Sundiang was saying thank you for the answer. And King Tangana is asking, what was the hardest or the best underwater archaeology dive you've done, and what was the project about?
So, wala pa ako masyado talagang experience kasi actually this is my first underwater training na like with all the equipment because actually this is my first time holding a dredger. So mabigat siya and sobrang komplikado niyang i-operate. I've only had 3. First one, I did a training in Australia pero it was the site was just on the shore so hindi talaga kami nag-dive. Pangalawa ko yung sa Subic, yung El Capitan. So we tried to document the El Capitan or some parts of it kasi it needs several weeks to analyze the one shipwreck alone. And then this is only my 3rd. So I'd say na ito kasi mas marami akong natutunan and mas marami akong nagawa.
I guess it's also the specialized na yung training dito because you already have those other trainings. You already have an idea on what you were supposed to do. Kate Lim has a question. So, Kath, did the course also teach you how to sample underwater sediments or coring?
Parang hindi nga nila nabanggit na nagko-core sila eh. So I think only sediment retrieval nila is the like grab method and then putting it in the sandbag.
Okay.
So, ganun lang. Wala, hindi sila nag-core. Kasi ano rin, yung itong particular site na to, mababaw lang siya. So hindi kailangan mag-core. Kasi ano lang, seabed agad siya. Kasi nga, malapit siya sa shore.
Mm-hmm. Again, what was the depth of this?
1 to 3 meters.
1 to 3 meters. Okay.
I mean, 3. Yung water was 3 meters from the surface, and then the site was just 1 to 3 meters more. So like maximum of 6 meters lang. 6.
All right. Okay, it makes sense. So if they want to do more analysis, do you think that, or did they also include the preservation of ceramics? Was there a problem? When ceramics are underwater, what are the challenges, I guess, that you face?
So when it comes to ceramics, the main culprit is the salt. Tag dito? formation or compaction. So what they do is put it in desalination gradually, yung pagbawas ng salt content. So first, it depends on the process, but they first put it in a salt water, so the actual concentration of salt.
Mhm.
So maybe the actual sample of salt from the site, and then every 2 weeks or so they lessen the concentration of the salt water, so they add tap water, and then until na maliit na yung concentration of salt. Kasi tag dito, lumalabas yung salt, so magkukos siya ng breakage sa ceramics.
Mhm. How is that process also? I mean, I know we don't have a lot of underwater archaeological projects here in the Philippines, but in your experience, how easy was that to do here?
What do you mean? Which is easy.
I mean the preservation. Sorry.
Preservation of ceramics?
Mhm. For underwater from underwater sites here in the Philippines.
Kasi wala tayong proper facility for that. So mga ano lang,
Mhm.
small time lang, yung mga nasa balde, ganyan. And I know si Rachel from the National Museum, my former colleague, siya yung supposedly conservator she is the conservator of the Much-D. So she has I think she has done preservation of ceramics from Mindoro from the previous archaeological site visit with Dr. Laksina and Dr. Kimura. So also metals, she's done some like preservation on these materials. So yun yung first method of preservation, desalination. So you have to always first remove the salt content of the artifacts. Kasi
So
patuloy
it's
siyang
not
dumadami kung hindi mo siya tatanggalin. But it will not be completely eliminated. Ano lang, liliit lang yung percentage.
I see. Kiko, Gastonia has a question. So he has two questions actually. So how long was the dive interval at 3 meters, and did you use target markers for your photogrammetry?
Okay, so dive interval, wala. Kasi we'd only go one time. Kasi for activities lang. So hindi talaga kami nag thorough excavation mode. But for the team members, they would go 1 hour twice. So there are teams of 2, so apat sila in the boat. 2 people would go in the first hour, and then tataas sila, and then yung next 2 people naman after an hour. So they would do that twice a day. So yeah, I'd say 1 hour. Pero since 3 meters lang, I don't think they need that long. And the second question is no, kasi just to get acquainted lang with the activity. So we didn't really use target markers, but we were taught how to use the target markers.
I'm looking at this educational program, and it looks like there's also an underwater photogrammetry course. Okay. So
actually, yung site na pinagtrabahuhan namin, ito rin yung site na ginagamit nila for underwater course. Kasi convenient yung ano niya, yung depth niya, tapos maganda rin yung lighting. Tapos they would always do this summertime para mas mataas yung araw.
Oh, okay. And is there a lot of underwater field sites there that they can use? Like for this one, we'll use it for photogrammetry. The next, we'll have another site that will focus on
perhaps
exploration or something.
Perhaps kasi ini-schedule rin nila itong mga courses during their excavation project period. Kasi limited lang din yung time na pwede silang mag-field. Hindi katulad sa Pilipinas, or actually meron din tayong period kasi hindi tayo nag-field pag typhoon season. So sa kanila, Although hindi ganun ka-extreme, meron din silang 4 seasons. So, hindi sila nag-excavate during winter season. And so, that's November until March, I think. So, they have like 6 to 7 months only to do excavation. So, dito rin nila ini-schedule yung training programs para 2-in-1, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone.
Okay. And for the Philippines, I guess that's also one of the things that I'm interested in. First of all, the only underwater archaeology study that I know that's been done in the Philippines is the San Diego, am I correct? And then the 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 oh my gosh, the junk, yung Chinese junk, which I forgot.
Which Chinese junk?
The one in Pandacan, sorry.
Pandanan?
Am I correct? Pandanan, sorry, Pandanan.
Palawan.
Santa Ana. King Tangana was saying Santa Ana.
Santa Ana?
Santa Ana is Manila, I think.
Yeah, hindi siya underwater.
Yeah. So there's only a few. Santa Cruz.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
So San Diego was excavated 1991 to 1993, I think. So like more than 20 years ago na. Pero of course the artifacts which are exhibited in the National Museum. So if pwede na ulit, bisita kayo sa National Museum. And Santa Cruz was excavated, I think, before 2000 pa, pero yung actual full excavation was in 2001, I think, or 2003. Yeah, so two of the many, kasi we've had hundreds of sites. The National Museum has visited and surveyed hundreds of sites already, and there are like 80 that have yielded shipwreck, like actual ship. I think 80. I have to go to the statistics again. Pero yun nga, we have hundreds of sites that have been excavated by the museum.
Okay. Are there sites at the Bicol area side?
Yes. Kasi yung Bicol area, yun yung entrance ng galleon trade.
Galleon.
Oo. So, may mga posibleng galleon dyan, pero deep site sila. So, medyo dangerous and we need sophisticated equipment to retrieve or to analyze them.
There's another question, follow-up. How about submerged pre-colonial settlements in the Philippines?
Merong pinropose na project like 2 years ago. So
I think John Peterson talked about this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
One is yung proposed 2 years ago was the Camiguin Sunken Cemetery. So dapat aaralin siya, pero may nagkaroon rin ng issues. So siguro in the future, John Peterson had survey of underwater cave in Marigondon, Cebu. They didn't find any, pero they believe na they were used as by ancient people, by like terminal Pleistocene, tama ba? Terminal Pleistocene period.
Because of the possible hearths that they were finding there. Yeah.
Something about that.
But other than that, there's very sorry.
No doubt, sabi ni Caitlin.
Sorry, no, from Kate. Okay. Oh, so what was that? Anyway, terracing. Okay. Thank you, Kate.
No, besides pa doon, yung underwater cave, Caitlin. Anyway, sige.
There are. Yeah. So this is something that I guess that there are still more to be explored in underwater. But the evidence of humans is the terracing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sabi ni Caitlin.
And
evidence of humans terracing, but we didn't find it inside the cave. So Caitlin was part of this team na nag-survey ng underwater cave in Cebu.
All right. So far there's very little study that has been done on on settlements pre-Spanish. Excuse me. Sorry, I will sneeze. Anyway, there are. How about other exploration? So you're also doing a lot of explorations in the National Museum before, and they're still continuing. How do they go about it? How do they do explorations? Do they need to get grants? Do they need to apply for grants?
Um, I don't think sorry, ito lang ay from the experience when I was there. I don't know kasi I'm not part of NM anymore and baka hindi ako yung authority to say it. Pero from my experience before, all the projects funding comes from the National Museum. So ina-apply yung project sa funding ng division like 1 or 2 years before sana. And then other partnership, sila yung previous practice, sila yung nagpo-fund. And then ang catch noon, meron silang share dun sa mariretrieve na artifacts. Pero since a few years now, tinanggal na yung ganitong practice or tinatanggal yung ganitong practice.
And that's something that a lot of people can actually talk about in another talk, I guess. I have other questions
as well. Controversial because it tackles on the treasure hunting side. So yeah, I don't think I don't want to talk about it.
I think I have other questions as well, but Kate has a follow-up question. So what about your PhD, Kat? How did this experience help you in your current research?
Wala, joke lang. Ano ba? Yung process of being underwater and retrieval of artifacts, it made parang nakita ko yung sa hindsight kung paano nila ni-retrieve yung materials for my site, because the materials that I'm actually studying or analyzing have already been retrieved. So they were these sites were excavated in the 90s, 80s. So materials na lang yung ina-analyze ko and I'm not doing field work anymore. So yung train of thought ko nawala ako. So yun nga nabigyan lang ako ng on the hindsight kung paano nila ni-retrieve yung materials, tapos kung ano yung dapat naging proseso. So perhaps na sa recommendation part sa PhD, mailalagay ko yung ganun.
So you're well, it makes sense. But are you only including for your PhD, or are you only including the underwater materials, or are you also looking at land materials?
Meron sa potential future paper ko yung ma-analyze yung land materials which have the same time period.
Okay. Which time, for everyone's knowledge, which time period are you looking at?
10th to 13th century. So proto history. Is it pre-colonial? 10th to 13th century.
Yeah. So not the 14th to 15th century. Okay. So take note, everyone. There's a difference. Okay.
They're very active in social media.
So they most of your photos are also there.
Yeah, na-post na nila. Nag-share na sila.
Perfect. All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for this talk. Thank you, Kath, for this talk. If you have any more questions, I think you can email Kath. Kath, can you also put your email, share your email on the chat, if they have any questions?
Sure.
Yes, and if you have any questions, so you can ask Kath. You can also follow the Facebook, Instagram, or the Twitter of the ICUA. And I think there's a lot of information that a lot of people might be able to get from here. And there are For next week, our Binalot talks will be given by Mr. Timothy James de Macali from the STS program in UP Diliman. So from the sea to the stars, the forgotten journeys of the Philippines' ancient navigators. So we'll be bringing out the poster for by tomorrow, I think. And in the meantime, thank you, Kath, for waking up very early and doing this talk. What time is it there now in France?
8 a.m.
Okay, 8 a.m. So we
Oh,
started at
madilim Croatia. Tsaka paligiran.
yes, and you were there already at 6 a.m. Girl, so master
Oo.
the clothes,
Girl,
which
ako
is nice.
pambahay ako underneath.
Girl, pambahay pala yan, nakakahiya naman sa'yo. Ay, shucks. So thank you.
Nag-record pa yata tayo,
Oo
guys.
nga, we're still recording. All right, thank you very much for
Bye.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.